sounds good.
Okay, now we're live.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first Wikimedia Technical Talk of 2020. The Wikimedia Technical Talks are run monthly, and the speakers come from the Wikimedia technical community. If you're interested in presenting a talk in the future, please see the page on MediaWiki to learn more about how to get started. Oh, are we live now? Sorry.
Yeah, we're live.
Awesome. Hold on, I'm having a technical issue right now. Oh, sorry, everybody. I had my live stream going at the same time.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Classic.
I was like, what's happening
All good.
there? Super
I've been
classy.
there.
All right. So I'll start over again. Just with that, the talks are run monthly and that the speakers come from the technical community. If you're interested in presenting a talk, please see the page on MediaWiki to learn how to get started. And today I'll be interviewing Kate Zimmerman. She's the head of product and analytics at Wikimedia. She is an expert in data and decision making, and she will share some insight about the kind of data her team uses and how they use that analysis to help shape product decisions. So today we're going to try to keep our talk to around a half hour. If we do have additional time, we'll take some questions through IRC Office and the YouTube live stream. You can ask questions through there and I'll field those. And then we also have some questions that came in before the talk as well that we'll try to address. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome, Kate. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me today.
We're really excited. I'm really interested in this topic. Now that, so can you just tell us a little bit about how we use data and how we use it to effectively inform decisions at the foundation?
Yeah, so I'm going to start for a bit. Part of my background is studying decision science, which is how people make decisions, how they weigh information. And that's something that I've taken with me as I've gone into the tech world and worked with quantitative data and thought about, what we present and use to help inform decision making. So at Wikimedia, part of what my team does is we support product teams in evaluating, the impact of the features they're rolling out to figure out what direction new features should go, what's working and what's not. But we don't just dump a whole bunch of data on people. We're focused on, making sure that we understand from the get-go what are the key goals and really narrowing it down to, what is the most primary aim. And then figuring out metrics and data that'll help answer those questions. Because the reality is that if we were to just push out a whole bunch of data, people don't always know what to do with it. They don't know, we only have limited attention spans or attention at any time. And so they might look at something that's not quite the right thing to guide their decision. So we do try to keep what we provide to people more focused and consistent with the goals they're trying to reach.
Awesome. Can you share with us some examples of some data-informed decisions that that we've made based on data that we've collected?
Yeah, so one fairly recent work that's being done by the growth team on product is work to really welcome and engage new editors into, say, the Wikipedia experience. And they've been working on projects for a few years, and one of the analysts on my team, Morten Wang, is supporting their work. In the beginning, after collecting some qualitative information, they were hearing a lot that people wanted, somebody to help them out, to help answer their questions as they were coming on board. And so there was some work directed towards, building a great help panel experience, giving people a chance to interact. But what they found once they rolled that out and started testing is that the reality is people weren't necessarily engaging with that to the extent that, they said they would, which is pretty common, that people often say that they'll do things that's not quite the same of their actual behavior. So what they did notice was that that people were clicking on their icon and seemed to be looking for a landing page or a home page. And so the growth team started accelerated development basically on bringing people to a home page and building out an experience there to help guide new editors in their journey, and have been finding positive results so far. So it did shift the direction of that project.
That's really cool. So can you tell us, based either on that or just in general, maybe, in general, what kind of data we collect and maybe what kind of data you collected for that particular project, so that we can kind of understand kind of as a whole and maybe in a more specific space about that.
Yeah. So my team works mostly with production data. And by that, I mean, the information that's collected as people come to, say, a website or an app and interact with it, click buttons, load pages, things like that. And so, we kind of look at what pages do people tend to visit a lot. What areas, will make tracking calls and start to collect information of, hey, we have this hypothesis that people will click on this button. So, do they click on that button? So that's the kind of information we collect. So it's things like, we also get some meta information about, what kind of browsers people are using. Are people interacting with Wikipedia, for instance, on a mobile device or on a desktop computer? Are they interacting with pages through one of our apps, or are they doing it through websites? And so to that, by collecting a lot of that sort of information, we can also start to see how trends are changing over time. So one of the things that has been, known, I would say, in the tech industry for a while is that people are moving increasingly to mobile devices and interacting, on phones. And it used to be that the majority of interactions, people looking at pages, visiting Wikipedia, it used to be that came from desktops. People were doing that on their computer. But as smartphones took off, increasingly people started coming to Wikipedia using their smartphones. And there was a turning point at where it went from majority traffic on desktop to majority traffic on phones. And so there's another example of, we see that kind of change and know that we need to make sure we're building out experiences that support people on the devices they're using.
Yeah, I can imagine that would really drive design decisions about just even how we deliver like content based on, knowing like where the majority of users are on what kind of device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we know that we collect data and we make decisions from that, but I know that a lot of our users are also concerned with kind of data collection in general, not just what we do collect, but also what we don't collect. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about maybe the kind of data that we don't collect from our users, or the things that we don't know, and maybe a little bit about why we don't collect it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, Wikimedia's focus on data privacy is one of the things that really attracted me to the foundation. I come from a world, I worked in the tech industry for a while, and places will collect all sorts of information about people and keep it without some, really strong policies. And we've been seeing some changes in the world as far as, governments finally realizing this can be a problem and making sure that they regulate the kind of data we collect. But the Wikimedia Foundation has been on the forefront of data privacy and making sure that, we're only collecting what we need to make better decisions for the products that, the Wikipedia and other sites that people are using and interacting with, and that we're super sensitive about storing information and also even collecting some information in the first place. So in a lot of internet industries, you can track an individual through when they clicked an ad to coming to your website, to interacting with it, leaving, coming back through email, and maybe making a purchase. And you can follow one person through that whole flow. And here, we don't collect that kind of information about our readers. We don't individually identify them. So it does make it a little harder on the product side, because it becomes harder to figure out, how do people know about Wikipedia? How do they get engaged? But it keeps data safer. And I know that this is important for a lot of people in the United States, and it may be even more important for people in other parts of the world where people are at risk if they are using or reading Wikipedia. So there is some great work done by the analytics engineering team a few years ago to figure out, how do we know how many, unique people come to Wikipedia without doing it in a way that identifies those people? And the way they calculate this is we do place a cookie that just notifies, hey, you visited Wikipedia on this date. And so when a new device comes to our sites, we just track, did they have that cookie that says they visited before? And if they visited before, then we know that they're returning. And if they didn't, then we consider them to be a new visitor. But what we don't have is information about how many times they visited before, because we don't preserve that kind of data to follow the full flow.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me. I think especially because I work on technical content, and it's important to understand our users and to know what their needs are. And we definitely have a challenge at times because we don't collect much data at all about anybody that visits those particular types of content. And so, and this, I just want to ask this question. You don't have to answer it if you don't have the question or off the cuff, but just like, how do you know kind of in post, like that the decisions you've made without maybe particular types of content or types of data driving it are successful? Do you have other ways to measure on the back end, or do you collect qualitative data or things like that that help you understand a little bit better who your users are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say that, so that question wouldn't be unique to us. It does become trickier because we're super, privacy sensitive. But in general, we do look for converging evidence from other places. So there are teams here at the foundation, a design strategy team, research team, learning and evaluation teams that look at data in different ways, may go out and do interviews. On my team's side, we might be looking at way people are interacting with a specific product, but we might try to figure out what are other ways we could address that question, and then see by asking sort of the question in different ways and looking at different types of data, are we getting answers that converge on one point, which gives us a lot more confidence in the recommendations that we provide to product teams. When the answers seem to diverge, then we have to do more digging. And there are some times where we have to make judgment calls, and we might roll something out, but try to measure it over time or look at macro impact over time. So it's not always possible to see the precise impact that one feature had, but sometimes we do start to see we've rolled out this kind of feature, and then over time we see some behavior shifts that may correlate with that.
Awesome. That's really, really interesting. So I do have a question. I had a couple of questions from the audience that came in when we announced the talk. So I want to go ahead and just ask you that this question is about, it's about dashboards. And the background for the question is that the person who asked has dashboards on the top of their mind a lot these days. And there's been a lot of analysis and reporting in online fundraising that's done manually. So it's a priority to begin implementing an automated dashboard in 2020. So the question is how to prioritize data points for automation. Should it be data directly related to our KPIs or things that take the most manual time? And that's one question. There's a follow-up. Do you want them both now, or would you like the second one after that?
Tell me the second one, and then I'll probably ask you.
What should goal setting look like regarding milestones towards automation? And could you autopsy one of your previous experiences with automated dashboards or provide a loose framework for managing time and expectations?
Okay, yeah, I will definitely ask for that one again, but one as I construct my answer. So I think the first part was about how you prioritize what sort of data goes into the dashboard. Is that a fair interpretation?
Yes.
Yeah. And number one thing is figuring out what the most important goals are. What are the key questions you want to address? And in the case of dashboards, so I assume they're using these reports that are answering certain questions, but really listing out the use cases that, say, these reports address, and why you want to have it automated. So, if we're talking about fundraising, and an example might be we want to know what sort of email messages or banner messages are effective in getting people to engage. I assume that that's a kind of question that comes up a lot, that people have to pull data for a lot, and that is then prime for being in a dashboard. So you're like, what are the primary questions you're trying to address? And then how frequently do you need the data is one of the other pieces, because if this is a question that you're only asking once a year, it might not be worth the investment to build the pipeline to get automated data up to a dashboard. It may be easier and better to just have somebody query the data and build a manual report. But if this is the kind of thing that you want to see every week or even every month over a period of time, then yes, it would go into a dashboard. We tend to look for data pieces that are used frequently to address key decisions. And then the other thing is trying to start sort of small, start with a couple of questions, because once you put out a dashboard, you'll see how people use it, and they may have follow-up questions that they hadn't necessarily anticipated early on. So, the general process is figuring out what are the most common questions that are asked. Can we automate this and put it in a dashboard? And then putting it out for use, and then iterating based on how people are using it and the questions they come up with after they've started using it. And then the second part of the question, can you repeat that again?
Do you want me to give that to you again?
Yeah.
Awesome. What should goal setting look like regarding milestones toward automation? And can you autopsy one of your previous experiences with automated dashboards, or provide a loose framework for managing time and expectations?
Yeah. I think I'll maybe take the second part first and talk about previous examples. So a big part of time spent in dashboards is, understanding where the data is and how, if it's in a format that can easily be pulled into a dashboarding tool or, a data visualization tool. If this is data that's available, it's updated automatically already on a regular basis, and is in a system that is sort of easily dashboardable. So a system like, for instance, we use Druid. There are other sorts of columnar data stores, but data warehouse kind of system that makes it easy to pull it into a dashboarding tool, then that's a huge part of the work right there. If you've got the data already, then you don't have to worry too much about that piece. If you don't have that data, then you're looking at a much longer process, because the transforming and figuring out how to build the pipeline to get data into an easy format to report on can take a lot longer. Let's see. So then Let me think about a good case. So we've been dealing with this in product analytics recently. And one example is something that we're working on currently, which is information about editors. Being able to know at an aggregate level, how often people are editing, where they're editing from. And we've got, over 80,000 active editors every month editing. And, I think the numbers are over 200,000 even more than that over the course of the year. So it can be a lot of information. And then the edits they're making, they are making billions of edits over time. All right, so it becomes really big data that's hard to just plug into a dashboard. So what we've had to do is Connie Chen, who's an analyst on my team, has been working with analytics engineering to aggregate data, have it available in our data lake, which is Hadoop, and then currently is working on further aggregating it to a smaller set so it can be easily queried and not take hours to run, and have that in Druid, which is our columnar database. And when I talk about further aggregating, it's taking things like key dimensions that we care about and knowing, say, this many editors edited from North America, for instance, during the month of July. So can be fairly aggregated. And then once that data is available in Druid, she will make that visible in Superset, which is what we're using for dashboarding. And that is making sure that the measures are clear, knowing since it's a pre-aggregated data set, when you want to bring in a count, you're actually taking a sum of all the data because it's pre-aggregated. Making sure that the dimensions make sense. So if people want to be able to identify whether an editor is a bot, something that's totally automated versus something that someone we think is, a human editor, not totally automated, being able to differentiate that in a meaningful way. And then the other key piece is making sure terms are consistent across other data sets that are available, because it can be a problem if people build dashboards in silos that then have slightly different definitions across teams and departments. So timeline, the work we've been doing on editors, it has, with data vetting and iteration and designing the data for ingestion, we're looking at like 2 quarters of work. So, 6 months or so. It's not full time all the time, right? Because some of the time this takes is code being in code review. But that's a pretty reasonable estimate, assuming that you've already got a tool connected to a data set and you don't have to worry about that too. Also, in this case, we're dealing with large scale data, and that does slow down the work. So it's very different if you're dealing with a small amount of data, for instance, in a MySQL database. Did I get the question there?
I think so. the original question is answering. But is 10:30? I did get one question on the YouTube live stream that I did want to ask, and then we'll close out. But I also want to let people know that we can also ask questions offline. That's totally fine, and I can forward those on to Kate. This question comes from the YouTube live stream, and Kate, I'm not sure if you're the best person to answer it or if it's the research team. But the question was, do we know how many research affiliates the foundation shares server logs or IP addresses with?
I don't know that offhand. That probably is best directed through the research team, and that's also something like with any of that, we would have NDAs, non-disclosure agreements in place.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty rigorous process, but I don't know offhand.
Okay, sounds good. And we can follow up with that offline later.
Yeah.
Awesome. So to close, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with us about data and making decisions based on it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's awesome and fascinating about the Wikimedia community and the foundation is the amount of data that's, again, aggregated, de-identified, but that's available publicly. So for people who aren't at the foundation, they should check out Wikistats, which is this great tool put together by analytics engineering, where they can explore information about page views and editors, look at overall trends. We have data dumps that are available. So if you go to Wikitech and look for data dumps, you'll find some really interesting data sets that you can work with and explore. And then if you go to MediaWiki.org and look for product analytics, you'll see our team page, and you can find out more about what our team does. A lot of my team's focus has been more internal right now, but get a sense for what's available and what we're looking at.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll take all of those links and we'll add them to the Wikimedia Technical Talks page as well, so that folks can look at it afterwards. Again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. This is super interesting, and I'm really, really glad that that you joined us. And then I also want to say thank you to Brendan Campbell, who has been an awesome help with AV on all of these talks. And then thanks everyone for joining us, and hope to see you next month.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.
Awesome.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.